We have used bin lifters for domestic and trade waste containers for many years in our sector. However, despite technological developments and operators' collective experience using this equipment, a significant number of serious accidents still occur, some of which have been fatal. The purpose of this campaign is to re-educate and heighten our situational awareness to some of the most critical safety instructions and considerations when using this equipment. The danger zone is the area directly at the rear of the vehicle, between the barrier arms, where there is a risk of becoming entangled in moving parts of machinery, such as bin lifting carriages during the tipping cycle. Additionally, cans, bottles, aerosols, and even solid objects may burst, break, or shatter when being compacted in the hopper, presenting a risk of being ejected. It's important to note that bin lifts operate in different modes depending on the design and specification. Automatic modes are the most hazardous. These lifts detect the container once presented and complete the full tipping cycle autonomously until the container is back on the ground. Semi-automatic lifts will detect the presence of a container and start the initial lift sequence until the wheels are slightly off the ground, allowing the loader to move to a position of safety by the control panel and complete the lift through a manual hold-to-run function. Manual mode will require the loader to push the container to the lifter and then operate the lifter through the hold-to-run button on the control panel. These different functions are critically important to be understood in terms of the danger zone, as if a person entered the zone, sensors would pick up their presence, assuming that a container is present, and therefore this is where the risk of entanglement is most significant. It's important to always establish what mode the bin lift is operating in before using it. There may be an occasion where you need to enter the danger zone. This could be due to overspilled material that needs clearing from the lifting carriage or other factors. In doing so, you must ensure that any energy to the lifter is isolated. Place the lifter in a manual mode and follow your safe working procedure and training. Before presenting containers to the lifter, it's important to inspect the condition of the container and its contents prior to moving it for any defects or non-conforming material that could pose a risk during the lifter operation. Inspecting the lip of the container is important to ensure that it correctly engages with the lifting comb and clamp. If the lip is cracked or damaged, it may result in the container being ejected from the lifting mechanism during the lift or lower cycle. This could injure loaders or cause property damage with nearby parked cars, as the bin will become a falling object. Ensure containers are not overfilled, often referred to as top-hatted. There are multiple safety and commercial reasons for this. In a safety context, there are manual handling considerations of safely transporting the container to the lifter considering its weight. But even more important than this is that waste may fall out during the lift, from which a natural human reaction may be to try and catch it, placing yourself in the danger zone, where there is moving equipment and a risk of becoming entangled. Many incidents have occurred, some fatal on this very point, and some where loaders have caught their fingers in the clamp due to trying to clear excess waste. Keeping out of the danger zone when the bin lifts are operational is essential. Additionally, waste may overspill onto the lifting mechanisms or the ground, where operatives may need to enter the danger zone. Your PPE can pose a risk of entanglement during the operation. Loose or torn PPE can become trapped, and there is a risk of it being snagged on the mechanism or container whilst in movement, which might have severe consequences. Only wear equipment assigned to you by your employer. Zip up your equipment to prevent it from flailing. Wear well-fitted PPE and replace any worn or damaged garments. When the lift is in its cycle, it's important you get yourself in a safe standing position. Either take a step to the side of the vehicle or 2 steps backwards at the rear to get out of the danger zone, but always remain situationally aware of your surroundings. For example, if loading roadside, stepping to the offside of the vehicle may put you at risk of stepping out into live traffic flows. Never step under a raised container to remove rubbish that may have fallen on the floor. Wait until the cycle is complete and use your brush and shovel to clear the debris. If collecting bagged waste, you have a couple of options available to you. Firstly, the use of the slave bin. This means replacing the bagged waste into another container that has been emptied and then re-presenting that container for loading. Alternatively, some refuse compaction vehicles have a rave plate that can be lowered to make the loading of bagged waste more ergonomic. Where the collection of bagged waste is permissible under your contract, you must only lower the rave plate with the bin lift mechanisms set in a manual mode and in accordance with any additional controls noted in your safe working procedures. The rave plate should have an isolating device fitted, but it must never be relied upon. Don't attempt to retrieve any items, including waste bins, from the hopper unless all the following conditions are met. The lifting and compaction mechanism has been isolated, the engine switched off and the ignition key removed. You can only retrieve the item without climbing onto the vehicle by standing on the ground and leaning in. You can only retrieve the item if it's not too heavy or bulky to be removed safely, and you do not have to stretch or adopt an awkward posture or encounter sharp or hazardous substances. The person doing so must keep all ignition keys in their pocket until they have finished and stood clear of the hopper. Where these conditions cannot be met in full, the driver must contact the supervisor or manager and seek further assistance from a workshop fitter. Salvaging items of waste, sometimes known as totting, is not allowed. Nothing should be removed from the hopper unless there is a valid operational reason to do so. If the vehicle is going to be left for a prolonged period, for example a break or lunch, then the driver must remove the keys and place them in their pocket to ensure the vehicle and lifter have been isolated. If collections are being made and the operatives disappear from view, the driver must isolate the bin lift until they return. This is done using the power take-off switch, known as the PTO, within the cab. If a member of the public approaches the danger zone with the intention of disposing of their waste, the operative must press the emergency stop button and alert the driver of the situation by pressing the driver call button. The operative will then ask the member of public to place the waste or leave the bin in a safe position, whilst asking them to retreat to a safe distance away from the vehicle, clearing the danger zone. The crew will then dispose of the waste into the hopper in the correct manner before returning the bin back to the member of the public. Drivers should always keep an eye on the working camera when loaders are working. If an unsafe behaviour or potential hazard is observed, press the in-cab emergency stop button. Loaders should not attempt to use the bin lift if the vehicle is in motion. You should only operate bin lifts if you have been trained and authorised. Report any problems with the lifter that affects its safe operation to your line management. Communication is key between the crew, understanding who takes responsibility for selecting manual, semi-automatic and automatic modes, as well as operating the controls. Remember, no job is so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely. Report any near-miss events, concerns or suggestions for improvements with the use of bin lifts to your supervisors.